welcome to the deep dive. Look, you, the learner, are here because you need efficient, thorough knowledge to navigate, well, the whole complex world of modern professional life.
Yeah, you don't really have time to read 5 different career guides.
Right, exactly. You need the core insights immediately. So our mission today is to cut through all that noise. We're going to skip the basic definitions and get straight to those aha moments that will genuinely accelerate your understanding.
And we have a really fascinating source stack for this.
Yeah.
We didn't just pull from, the usual management books.
Right.
Instead, we have these deep, very candid accounts from 2 professionals, and they're operating in what seem like completely different universes.
Totally different.
We have a graphic designer. She's working in a bustling marketing agency in Manchester in the UK. And then we have a seasoned software engineer who's tackling mobile development remotely for a startup out of Chicago.
And the temptation is to just, compare apples and oranges, creative versus technical, visual versus logical. But our core mission here is to just ignore those superficial differences. We want to extract the universal principles. We're looking for that common ground, the transferable skills.
And the shared challenges.
Exactly. The things that bind a person who uses Adobe Illustrator all day to the person who's writing in, Python and JavaScript?
And the biggest surprise, right out of the gate, is just how similar the demands are. Our deep dive immediately showed that despite the different deliverables, success in both roles really hinges on 3 non-negotiables.
Okay, what are they?
Constant, nonstop learning, incredibly strong, nuanced communication, and robust, flexible problem-solving skills.
So the technical talent, the ability to actually code or to design, that's just the price of entry.
It's just a ticket to the game.
Exactly. We're going to spend a lot of time today focusing on those soft skills because, as the source material just confirms again and again, they're often the most vital and, ironically, the most neglected parts of professional development.
That's so true.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We can start by looking at the specific environments these 2 professionals call home and, how that environment shapes their daily pressures.
Let's start in the UK with a designer. So she's a core graphic designer within a full-service marketing agency in Manchester. And agency life is just inherently kinetic. It's high energy, fast-paced.
And it's all driven by external client demands, right?
Completely.
Her core role is to be the visual voice for, a rotating cast of bands. We're not talking about a narrow specialization here. Her scope is just vast.
Yeah, she's building those foundational branding elements, the logos, the color palettes, the whole visual identity.
But she's also responsible for executing those identities across every conceivable medium. We're talking websites, detailed social media graphics, full advertising campaigns that run in print and digital. It's a lot.
And the source material really emphasizes that this diversity of work, that's a major draw to the agency environment for her.
It stops things from getting stale.
Exactly. Every 3 to 6 months, she might be working on a campaign for, say, a local coffee brand, and then boom, immediately after, it's a national push for a financial services company. You're constantly forced to jump into new visual languages and meet totally different audience expectations.
Plus, you have the concrete advantages of that agency setting. Our designer points to the benefits of intense, immediate collaboration. If she hits a creative wall, she can just pivot in her chair and immediately bounce ideas off an art director or a copywriter who's sitting, 3 feet away.
And then there's the foundational stability. You can't overlook that. A consistent salary, health benefits, and maybe most importantly in such a demanding field, paid vacation time. That financial security is a significant weight off the shoulders.
For sure.
Now, let's contrast that stability with the world of our second professional, the engineer. He's a senior software engineer. He specializes in developing mobile apps, so native iOS and Android. And he's based in Chicago, working remotely.
And he's not just coding games or social media feeds. His focus is really powerful. It's very purpose-driven. He works for an ed tech startup, educational technology.
Right. And that startup's mission is, well, it's ambitious. They want to leverage technology to make learning accessible and engaging on a global scale.
Yeah.
Basically trying to tackle massive education gaps with software.
That's huge.
And the source notes, he brings 7 years of experience to this role. That's a crucial detail.
Why is that?
Because it means he's done the junior work, he's wrestled with that mid-level complexity, and now he's at a point where he's contributing significantly to system architecture. He worked his way up, which implies a deep understanding not just of coding, but of the whole development workflow and organizational growth.
So his environment is defined by that startup urgency, but also the modern reality of remote work. He has geographical flexibility. He's in Chicago, but his team could be, I don't know, anywhere.
They could be spread all over. But that startup focus means his days are intense. They're driven by lean resources, really aggressive timelines, and this constant need to deliver rapid, measurable impact on their educational platform.
So the balancing act here is really clear. The designer, she thrives on the kinetic energy and the collaborative safety net of her agency.
And the engineer is motivated by the mission and the flexibility of remote work, but that's tempered by the intense demands of a high-growth startup.
Okay, so now let's talk about the shared professional dilemma that really connects these two paths. Because we have to introduce this core tension that, both of them confront every single day, and that stability versus freedom.
This tension isn't unique to them, of course, but it's felt so acutely in both of these highly skilled, in-demand fields.
How so for the designer?
Well, the designer, she loves the agency team, she loves the financial safety net, but she admits to missing the days when she was freelancing. She misses being her own boss, setting her own rates.
And choosing her own projects.
And most importantly, exercising full creative control by actively choosing the specific projects she wants to work on.
The source actually provided a great little anecdote that brings this to life. She mentioned working on this major rebranding campaign where the client, they had mandated the use of this really outdated, restrictive brand guide.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right. It just stifled the modern aesthetic she wanted to implement. She felt completely constrained. She was trading her creative freedom for that guaranteed paycheck. And that's the price of stability right there.
And that tension is just as strong on the engineering side. Our engineer notes that this is like the defining career crossroads for so many successful developers.
After they hit that senior status.
Yeah, exactly. They often consider jumping ship to start their own companies or become independent contractors earning significantly higher rates, or maybe launch their own software as a service product, a SaaS product.
So we're talking about potentially leaving a really comfortable, high six-figure salary to embrace the high risk of a completely unknown venture.
He's wrestling with that classic dilemma. Do I value the security of a consistent paycheck and predictable benefits? Or do I chase that potential for, outsized reward and total independence that entrepreneurship offers?
Especially now. In uncertain economic times, this tension just gets amplified.
Totally. For the designer, the thought of having to scramble for clients during a recession makes that agency stability look very, very appealing.
And for the engineer.
For him, the possibility of being laid off in a tech downturn makes the self-reliance of contracting or owning his own intellectual property, like a SaaS product, look like the ultimate form of security. It's a different kind of safety. So whether you are building visual identities or writing back-end infrastructure, the foundational career question for you, the learner, it remains the same. What is your optimal balance point between career control and financial security, and how does your personal risk tolerance dictate that choice? That's the big one.
Okay, so if that's the strategic map, let's zoom in a bit. Let's look at the operational toolkit they use every single day. We can start with the designer's daily workflow and how she manages the demands of agency life. It's very structured, starting right around 9 a.m.
And that structure is absolutely necessary to manage the external volatility of client demands. Her day starts pretty traditionally, coffee, checking emails, but the first critical piece of organization is the team meeting.
And this isn't just a social catch-up.
No, not at all. This meeting is a triage session. It's designed to manage resource allocation, clarify deadlines that might have shifted overnight, and most critically, to process client feedback.
In an agency, feedback is the lifeblood, but it's also, I'd imagine, the biggest source of creative friction.
Absolutely. If a client from California sent major revisions at 2 a.m. GMT, that 9 a.m. meeting is when the designer figures out which fire to put out first.
So after the logistics, the technical work begins. And we should probably do a deep dive into the specific tools because these are the non-negotiable hard skills for anyone aspiring to this career.
For graphic design, the industry standard is still, and probably will be for a while, the Adobe Creative Suite.
And specifically, we're talking about mastery of Photoshop for photo manipulation, right?
And Illustrator for any vector-based graphics logos, iconography, and then InDesign for complex layout work like brochures or multi-page documents.
If you don't know those three programs, you are just not functioning as a modern designer, period.
But the modern design landscape has radically expanded.
Yeah.
And the Force emphasizes two really crucial additions to that list. First, Figma.
Figma has totally revolutionized web and app design.
It really has. It allows for this collaborative, cloud-based design and prototyping, which instantly connects the designer to the development team. It basically replaced older, plunkier tools like Sketch because of that real-time collaboration feature.
And what was the second edition?
After Effects. With social media and digital advertising demanding motion, simple static graphics are often just not enough anymore.
Right, you have to make things move.
You do. After Effects is essential for creating motion graphics, animated text, short looping video content. If you want to work on digital campaigns, you have to understand how to add motion to your static designs. So that list of tools, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Figma, and After Effects, it really underscores a critical point for the learner. This job is not static, not at all. If this designer had learned the trade 15 years ago, she wouldn't have needed Figma or After Effects. The need for constant learning due to evolving tools, it's just built into the profession.
In the afternoon, that's where the communication skills really kick in. She transitions from creation to collaboration.
Yeah, this means refining those initial mock-ups, jumping on video calls to present concepts to clients, and making sure her visuals align perfectly with what the copywriter is saying and what the account manager's strategic goals are. The work is constantly cross-functional.
Okay, so now let's transition across the globe. Let's look at the engineer's operational structure. It follows the rigorous discipline of the Agile methodology, and it's managed entirely remotely.
If the designer is dealing with the kinetic energy of an agency, the engineer is managing the equally demanding structure of remote Agile development.
So how does that day start in Chicago? It's all centered around the daily stand-up meeting at 10 a.m.
The stand-up is the heartbeat of Agile, but there's a fair critique that it can just become a ritual checklist.
Right. Just going through the motions.
Yeah. And the engineer's source notes clarify that the key to keeping it productive is brutal efficiency and a strict focus on 3 required updates. It has to be brief, 15 minutes, tops.
And it has to cover yesterday's progress, today's specific focus, and most importantly, identifying any blockers.
That's the one.
A blocker is such a crucial piece of internal operational language. It's not just an inconvenience, right? What is a real blocker for the engineer?
It could be anything from needing a response from the product manager to clarify some ambiguous requirement, to being held up waiting for another team to finish a necessary API. Or it could be a massive technical issue in the underlying system that requires group debugging.
So the stand-up ensures these issues are aired immediately.
So the team can mobilize to remove the impediment, not just the individual engineer. It prevents silos from forming. Okay, so once the stand-up is done, the core tasks begin. We know he's writing new features and fixing bugs, but the source pointed out something that's strategically vital. Refactoring existing code for efficiency. Refactoring. This is where the engineer manages what we call technical debt.
Technical debt, explain that.
Well, when you're a high-growth startup, you often write code really quickly to push out features fast. That speedy, sometimes messy code, that's a debt that you have to pay back later. Refactoring is the process of restructuring that existing code without changing its external behavior.
Okay, wait, so why is that strategically important to his edtech startup specifically?
Because if they don't refactor, the debt just accumulates. The system gets slower, it gets more expensive to maintain, and future features take exponentially longer to build because you're wrestling with old, inefficient code.
So he knows that refactoring is an investment in long-term sustainability and performance.
It's not just a nice to have, it's essential for a platform that's aiming to scale globally.
And how do they ensure quality control in a remote environment where you've got everyone committing code at the same time?
Through the process of code reviews. It's a mandatory peer-to-peer process. Before any new code is merged into the main application, a teammate has to examine it, line by line.
What are they looking for?
Bugs, of course. But also adherence to coding standards, and they'll suggest architectural improvements. This ensures high code quality and, critically, it ensures knowledge transfer among the team. It's a mechanism for continuous peer mentoring.
This whole remote iterative process must demand a really cohesive digital tool set. He mentioned GitHub, Slack, and Jira. What's their role?
They're the operational trinity. GitHub handles version control. It's the single source of truth for the code. It allows multiple developers to work on the same project without, corrupting each other's work.
And Slack is the communication layer.
Right. It replaces the water cooler conversation. And then Jira is the task management backbone. It tracks all those features, bugs, and blockers through the entire development cycle, and it provides transparency to the whole company.
And finally, to close the loop on this continuous improvement idea, the source emphasizes weekly team retrospectives. This is organizational self-correction in action. The retrospective asks, what went well last week? What challenges did we face? What can we change about our process to be better next week? So it's not about blaming people.
No, never. It's about diagnosing systemic issues.
Mm.
For you, the learner, this shows that continuous improvement isn't just about, reading a new book. It's built into the operating structure of successful modern teams.
It's just so clear that regardless of the output, whether it's a visual design or working code structure and process are paramount.
Absolutely.
But the glue holding it all together is that communication layer. That's the soft skill that separates a competent technician from a truly effective professional.
The ability to communicate, it just transcends technical ability. For the designer, technical mastery of the Adobe suite is necessary. But it fails if she can't articulate why she chose a certain color palette or a specific typeface.
She has to sell the concept.
She has to sell the creative concept, she has to understand subjective client feedback, and translate a vague brief into a concrete, powerful visual solution.
In fact, the designer noted that the most challenging part of her job isn't the design itself, it's managing the expectations and the subjectivity of the client.
And she has to communicate with her team, the copywriters, the account managers, to make sure everyone is singing from the same strategic hymn sheet.
And the engineer faces the mirror image of this. He has to be able to translate these complex, often invisible technical concepts.
Like why a database migration will cause downtime, or why a feature is going to take 3 weeks instead of 3 days.
Exactly. He has to translate that into clear, simple terms for non-technical stakeholders. For investors, the CEO, the sales team.
And his agile work relies entirely on interpersonal skills, participating constructively in those code reviews, providing clear guidance in stand-ups, mentoring junior developers. The idea that engineering is for introverts who just want to write code in isolation is a myth.
It dies very quickly in a modern startup. It really does. And this leads us straight into the core challenges, starting with the designer's perennial battle. The subjectivity challenge. This is just deeply relatable for anyone in a creative field. The designer described the pain of spending 20 hours perfecting a logo concept.
Using all her expertise in color theory and composition.
Right, only to have it rejected with that vague feedback like it just doesn't pop, or my favorite, can we make the colors more exciting? Because design is subjective, that rejection can feel like a critique of her personal taste and talent.
And the critique asked a really good question. Can a creative person truly not take that rejection personally?
And what did the source say?
Her coping mechanism, as she detailed it, confirms it's a constant struggle. But the strategy is to consciously shift the framing. She forces herself to see the rejection not as a personal failure, but as that particular concept not meeting that particular client's needs at this particular moment in time.
That's emotional intelligence applied directly to professional practice. What about proactive strategies? What did the source suggest to mitigate this subjectivity?
It's all about process control. First, front-loading the project with exhaustive clarifying questions to create a really strict brief.
Getting ahead of the problem.
Exactly. Second, showing deliberately rough work-in-progress versions very early on. This prevents massive wasted effort later. And third, and this is maybe the most strategic, preventing multiple distinct creative options.
So like a safe one, a moderate one, and a risky one.
Precisely. This makes the client feel ownership over the direction, rather than simply responding yes or no to a single vision.
It sounds like her coping mechanism is essentially a form of deep problem-solving skill, but it's applied to managing human psychology, not just visual elements.
It is. And the engineer faces an analogous frustration. He might architect a complex system, a database, an API structure, based on the current business needs, only for the business strategy to pivot 6 months later,
rendering his architecture inefficient, or forcing him to completely rebuild a core component. The solution is the same. Detached, iterative development, and not getting emotionally attached to the solution you created. But the engineer has his own unique and, you could argue, existential battle, the technical challenge. Just keeping up with technological obsolescence.
This is the treadmill every professional in tech faces. The engineer, with his 7 years of experience, explicitly noted that major frameworks he mastered just 3 years ago are now considered legacy or outdated.
Wow.
New languages, new cloud architectures, new tools emerge constantly. The pressure is just relentless. You simply cannot learn everything, and trying to do so just leads to fragmentation and professional anxiety.
So if you can't learn every new tool, how do you handle that overwhelming influx of information and avoid, becoming obsolete yourself?
The coping strategy is to shift your focus from specific technologies to fundamental, timeless principles.
Okay, so instead of specializing only in the current hot JavaScript framework,
The successful engineer prioritizes learning concepts like clean code practices, established software design patterns, efficient data structures, and generalized problem-solving approaches.
can you give a specific example of that? What's the real difference between learning a principle versus learning a tool?
Sure, a tool is something like React Native, which is used for mobile development. A principle is understanding object-oriented programming, or OOP, or functional programming concepts.
Okay.
So if React Native dies in 5 years, the engineer can easily transition to the next framework because the underlying principles of good software architecture, how to manage complexity, how to handle state, how to write testable code, those remain constant.
So he learns specific technologies selectively.
Yeah, based on clear project requirements and solid industry consensus rather than just chasing every new shiny tool that comes along.
So what we're learning here is that for both roles, mastery means becoming a generalist in process and a specialist in application. Success isn't defined by the sheer volume of technical knowledge you consume.
No, it's defined by your ability to apply flexible, resilient fundamentals and communicate clearly. That's how you mitigate the external pressures of subjective clients or relentless technological change.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling the pull toward either the creative agency or the technical startup world, we have some incredibly practical, actionable advice from both professionals on how to get into their fields. Let's start with career entry in software engineering. The first piece of advice, and the critique noted this is powerful, is don't be intimidated by the entry barriers, right? The myth that you need a math genius IQ.
Yeah, or a formal 4-year computer science degree. He is adamant that it's often just a myth. He says some of the most innovative and productive developers he's worked with are self-taught or came from humanities or philosophy backgrounds.
So their strength is logic and problem decomposition, not just calculus.
Exactly. So once you accept that your background isn't a barrier, the guidance is specific. Step 1. Start small. Pick one beginner-friendly, widely used language. The recommendations are still Python, which is great for scripting, data science, back-end work, or JavaScript, which is the indispensable language of the web. Pick one and stick to it for at least 6 months.
Step 2 is leveraging the incredible ecosystem of free educational resources. You don't need to go into massive student debt right away.
No. The engineer specifically shouted out platforms like Codecademy, Free Code Camp, and the massive libraries of high-quality tutorials on YouTube. These resources let you learn the foundations without financial risk. And step 3 is the critical differentiator. Build things. You have to. You cannot absorb programming theory just by watching videos or reading docs. You have to physically write the code, hit the errors, and debug the messes.
So start with tiny, manageable projects, like a simple command line calculator or a basic to-do list app.
Or build and host a personal portfolio website. And then you gradually increase the complexity. He advises moving on to building something that uses an external API, maybe a weather app or a basic social media clone. These form the concrete, demonstrable backbone of your portfolio. And for those aiming for a professional job, the engineer gave 2 advanced tips. First, contribute to open source projects on GitHub. This is so crucial. It immediately shows potential employers that you have real-world collaboration skills. It shows you can read and understand someone else's code base, and it shows initiative.
But doesn't that require a huge time investment? And isn't there a risk that new learners might get totally overwhelmed trying to contribute to a massive code base like, I don't know, Kubernetes or the Linux kernel?
That's a great question, and he addressed it. He advised starting small. Don't look for major feature development. Look for repositories that need documentation fixes, typo corrections, or simple bug reports.
So it's about demonstrating the process of collaboration.
Not necessarily solving the hardest algorithm.
And the second advanced tip.
Network. The tech community, despite its reputation for isolation, is genuinely supportive. He recommends attending local meetups, joining online communities like specialized Slack or Discord channels, and participating in hackathons. He actually got his very first developer role through a connection he made at a local JavaScript meetup.
That confirms it. Knowledge acquisition happens both in front of the screen and through conversation. Okay, so let's switch gears to career entry advice for graphic design. It starts not with a tool, but with a philosophical foundation. Foundation first. So if engineering is about logic, design is about visual literacy. Aspiring designers have to develop a strong theoretical foundation in the principles that govern effective visual communication.
We're talking genuine mastery of color theory, typography, composition, and visual hierarchy.
And these principles are timeless.
The designer emphasized that they apply whether you are designing a physical billboard, a complex e-commerce website, or a simple social media ad. They are the grammar and the syntax of visual communication. The technical execution comes next, mastering the industry-standard tools, mainly the Adobe Creative Suite. But here's the powerful caveat she shared. Software is merely a tool. Principle trumps technical expertise. You can be a Photoshop wizard, but if you don't understand how to use negative space or choose a typeface with intention, your technical skill is wasted.
This ties directly back to the engineer's advice on fundamentals.
It does. The design equivalent of focusing on clean code principles is a requirement for constant observation. The designer advises new professionals to become perpetual students of the visual world.
What does that actually look like day to day?
It means not just looking at advertisements or product packaging or websites, but actively analyzing why they work or why they fail to communicate effectively.
Why did they choose that font? Why is this color used? How does this layout guide my eye?
Exactly. The best designers are constant observers who dissect the design choices happening all around them.
And just like the engineer, the portfolio is the designer's currency. But the strategy has to be rigorous.
The portfolio must show not just the polished final product, but the process. Employers want to see the sketches, the initial mood boards, the discarded iterations, and the written rationale that drove your creative decisions.
It proves you're a strategic problem solver responding to a brief, not just someone who makes pretty pictures.
And finally, to cut through the competition, she strongly advises developing a niche or specialty. While broad versatility is appealing, becoming known as the expert, the go-to person for complex logo design or motion graphics or B2B web design, that helps you establish a reputation and secure higher-level work much faster. This advice, across both fields, it culminates in a really powerful synthesis. The T-shaped concept. The T-shaped skill set is the ideal model for the modern professional, regardless of their field. The horizontal bar of the T represents broad knowledge across many areas, a working understanding of project management, basic finance, communication, adjacent tools.
But the vertical leg of the T represents deep, specialized expertise in one or two specific domains. If you're applying for jobs right now, you can't just say you know Photoshop or Python. The T-shape gives you the language to talk about your competitive advantage.
For the designer, that vertical depth might be mastery of complex typography and branding psychology. For the engineer, it might be deep knowledge of cloud architecture, like AWS or Azure, or secure mobile application architecture. That depth is what translates into premium professional value and strategic input.
So the takeaway here for you, the learner, is to invest broadly in skills like communication and process. That's the horizontal bar. But make sure you are actively carving out an area of specialized, market-relevant depth, that vertical bar.
That's where the value is.
Okay, so moving past entry, let's explore the long-term sustainability and the emotional rewards that keep these professionals motivated through those difficult, often highly pressured workdays.
The rewards are fundamentally different, and it's based on the nature of their impact. For the engineer, the fulfillment is intellectual. It's the joy of pure problem solving.
He describes the satisfaction of facing a complex technical puzzle.
Yeah, like optimizing the application database query speed by 50% and breaking it down into solvable components and then building an elegant solution.
But the real joy for him comes from the scale of it all. He works for an ed tech startup, so he sees his code helping students learn in developing nations or overcoming access barriers. The fulfillment is knowing his abstract work affects thousands or millions of users globally. It's motivation through scale.
The designer's fulfillment, by contrast, is far more immediate and tangible. She told a great specific anecdote. She mentioned stopping traffic once, safely of course, just to take a photo of a massive billboard featuring a campaign she had designed.
That's amazing.
Right. The reward is seeing that physical proof of her work out in the world, knowing the message reached people and resonated visibly. It's motivation through tangible impact.
Despite these rewards, both fields are incredibly demanding, which brings us to the crucial discussion of the work-life balance imperative. The burnout risk is high. It's driven by tight deadlines, last-minute client changes.
And what the engineer specifically called the toxic hustle mentality that's so prevalent in many startup cultures.
The toxic hustle mentality, he described it as this implicit pressure to always be on.
It's the expectation that if a code deployment fails at 9 p.m., you drop everything to fix it. Or that subtle judgment when you don't respond to a Slack message within an hour, even on a weekend. It's the culture that conflates long hours with productivity.
The designer, who faces agency deadlines, has developed specific boundary-setting strategies. She learned, through necessity, to enforce rigid boundaries.
Like no checking work emails or Slack after 7 p.m. or on weekends, unless it's an explicitly documented client-facing emergency.
She realized that responding immediately just trains the client to expect immediate access at all hours.
Critically, she also had to learn to speak up honestly if a timeline was truly infeasible. She moved away from that young professional mistake of saying yes to everything, realizing that saying yes to an impossible deadline only guaranteed rush work and eventual burnout.
And for recharging her creative batteries, she consciously prioritizes activities outside the digital sphere. Creative hobbies like painting, physical activities like yoga.
She views these not as optional leisure, but as necessary fuel for her creative output. The downtime makes the work time more effective.
The engineer, working remotely, faces that unique challenge of boundary dissolution, where the office just merges into the home.
His separation techniques are essential for maintaining mental health in a remote setting. He employs strict mental and physical boundaries. This involves having a dedicated, closed-off workspace used only for professional activity.
And more fascinatingly, he uses a mental transition ritual.
Yes, since he doesn't have a physical commute, he mimics one. He takes a long walk outside before the workday begins to mentally gear up, and he takes another distinct walk immediately after his shutdown time.
That second walk acts as a psychological buffer. It signals to his brain that the shift is over and the house is now personal space again.
And both professionals emphasize the power of time off. The engineer points out that in the U.S., professionals are often notorious for leaving vacation days unused.
But completely disconnecting, no Slack, no email, is crucial for maintaining productivity and creativity.
And taking breaks models positive behavior for the entire team. When a senior leader or engineer takes a full disconnected vacation, it demonstrates trust in the team to function autonomously. And it sets a healthy, sustainable standard for everyone else, which ultimately fights that toxic hustle culture.
Finally, let's look at the career progression and crossroads in both fields. Neither one is a single, rigid ladder. They both offer multiple directions for growth.
The designer's progression is focused on gaining strategic input and mentorship ability. She's aiming for a senior or lead designer role, which involves less hands-on production and more focus on mentoring junior staff, managing the creative budget.
And providing that high-level strategic input on overall campaign direction and client relationships.
And her potential paths are varied. She could stay at her stable agency and climb the management structure. She could move to a specialized boutique branding studio that focuses only on high-end identity work.
Or she could move in-house, becoming the internal designer for a single large brand she feels passionately about.
The engineer, with 7 years under his belt, is facing a classic set of crossroads. Path 1 is technical leadership.
Which means moving into an engineering manager, or EM, role.
Right. This involves significantly less coding and shifts the focus entirely to people leadership, setting team priorities, making strategic technical decisions like choosing the next framework or cloud vendor, and hiring talent.
What's the emotional challenge of that path?
He notes that many EMs miss the satisfaction of solving a coding problem themselves. They have to transition from being the primary problem solver to being a facilitator who removes blockages and provides strategic direction for others. It requires a fundamental shift in identity.
And path 2, which taps right back into that stability versus freedom dilemma, is entrepreneurship.
This means taking the high risk of launching a personal software as a service product, a SaaS, something that solves a niche problem and generates recurring revenue. Or it could mean joining an early-stage startup as a founding engineer, where the equity risk is high, but the potential impact and financial rewards are exponentially greater.
So the conclusion on growth is deeply reassuring for anyone in these highly skilled roles. Both fields reward flexibility, initiative, and the willingness to pivot between technical depth and people management. The only rigid path is the one you impose upon yourself.
Well said.
We've covered a substantial amount of ground today, pulling back the curtain on modern professional life by analyzing the experiences of a creative agency designer and a technical startup engineer. And the core learning is just undeniable. Mastery requires a powerful, intentional blend of hard skills, whether it's knowing the intricacies of the Adobe Suite or mastering Python and universal soft skills. Clear communication, focused teamwork, professional resilience, process and fundamental principles matter significantly more than the specific tools we use today.
Absolutely.
And you have to approach your career like an athlete approaches their training. A commitment to constant practice and continuous improvement built right into your daily workflow.
And that balance between stability and independence, that's a foundational professional choice you will revisit many times. Proactive, intentional boundary setting is essential for fighting the inevitable creep of burnout.
So as we close this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought that encapsulates the difference in what truly motivates these professionals.
The designer is fulfilled by tangible, visible impact. The poster you see, the website you interact with, that changes a brand's perception.
And the engineer is motivated by scale, the intellectual satisfaction of solving deep technical puzzles that affect vast numbers of users globally. So for you, the learner, considering your next career move, ask yourself this. Do you derive more fulfillment from the satisfaction of seeing your work physically manifest in the world and knowing it resonated tangibly? Or from solving complex, abstract systems and knowing your elegant solution affects users at massive global scale? Which form of impact, the tangible or the scalable, truly motivates your professional choices? That answer might just tell you everything you need to know about where your next deep dive should take you.